كافي مزيده حمدا يليق بجلال وجهه وعظيم سلطانه له الحمد في الأولى والآخرة وهو الحكيم الخبير. صلى الله وسلم وبارك وأنعم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, we'll continue the 40 hadith about fasting. And the hadith that we're going to start about today, inshallah ta'ala, is going to be hadith Anas. عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال: سافرت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في رمضان فلم يعب الصائم على المفطر ولا المفطر على الصائم. The sick person and the traveler. Inshallah ta'ala. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, specifically is going to be for the traveler. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu narrating, he said, I traveled with the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. سافرت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. I traveled with the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam during Ramadan. سافرت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في رمضان فلم يعب الصائم على المفطر. The one fasting did not criticize the one who was not fasting. ولا المفطر على الصائم. And also the one who was not fasting did not criticize the one who was fasting. Hadith متفق عليه. So this hadith, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he talk about that the traveler has a permission or the choice between fasting and not fasting. The traveler has that choice. And as we see from the hadith, that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam consented to the Sahaba, like, fasting and not fasting. And that consent is a proof by itself. So the traveler, of course, the Ramadan is going to be wajib on them, but they have permission to not fast during in Ramadan because of traveling. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that also in the Quran, وَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. And whoever is ill or on a journey or is traveling, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said the same number of days on which one did not fast must be made up from other days. So this is like, the option that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the person who is sick or the person who is traveling. But there's few things that I need, inshallah ta'ala, to clarify. The first thing is, when we say traveling, the purpose of travel has to be permissible. Like when you're traveling, that traveling has to be, the reason of the travel has to be permissible. Like for example, you're traveling like for vacation or for business, if the business is halal, like going vacation, but for good, like, the halal reason or good reason, permissible reason, or like even you're going for ibadah, you're going to get this exception. But if the reason of travel is ma'siyah, if the reason of travel is disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the person will not get the exception that we're talking about. Will not get the choice. That person has to fast. So that's the one thing. And also when we're talking about which one is better for the person, is it better for traveler to fast? Is it better for the traveler not to fast? Which one is better? Like if there's a hardship, like when you fast, fasting creates a hardship on the traveler, or like it's gonna cause severe hardship, then it's gonna be prohibited from the traveler to fast. And like we know the famous hadith that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the like you know the Sahaba, he told them to break their fasts when it became very difficult on them. So, and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told them, and when many of them they did not break their fasts, he called for water after Asr, and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he drank it, and the people looked at him. And then later on, they say, Ya Rasulullah, some of people are still fasting. At that time, it was very difficult to continue fasting that time, because they were in in the battle. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Ulaika al-usah, ulaika al-usah." Those are the disobedience. Those are the disobedience. So if there is a severe hardship coming from the fasting, then it's going to be prohibited from you. If there's no severe difficulties or something like that for the person, it's very varied. Maybe a little bit the person you're going to feel when you're traveling, but it's not severe difficulties. Then it's preferred for the person to take the exception that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. إن الله يحب أن يؤتى رخصه إن الله يحب أن تؤتى رخصه كما يحب أن يؤتى عزائمه. إن الله سبحانه وتعالى يحب أن تؤتى رخصه كما يحب أن تؤتى عزائمه. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that people they take the exceptions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves people to carry out and take His orders. Now, if it's easy for the person to fast, it's easy for the person, for him he's traveling, but it's very simple for him to fast, then that time, it's maybe the fasting is going to be preferred in that time, or at least the person has an option for both sides. Now, and also is the sick person, same thing they have. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him exception, but of course when we're talking about the sickness is a sickness it's going to be kind of temporary. The most of the time, people they recover from it, or the chronic diseases, like the cancer, diabetes, or for example, and so on. So if the sickness is sickness that most of the time is recoverable, and the people they recover from it, then we're gonna say you have a chance an option to break your fast, but you're gonna make it up. But if the person has sickness like chronic disease, then we're gonna say that person only need to pay fidya, or to feed one person every day of Ramadan. Now, so that's what it's gonna be when we're talking about this hadith. If the person has illness, if there's illness coming occur to the person during the daytime of the Ramadan, and he's fasting, and it's becoming a hardship to complete the day, then also that it's permissible for him to break the fast in any parts. Now, so that's the hadith. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying this hadith, أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال سافرت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في رمضان فلم يعب الصائم على المفطر ولا المفطر على الصائم متفق عليه. والحديث الذي بعده هو الحديث عن معاذة بنت عبد الله العدوية قالت سألت عائشة رضي الله عنها فقلت ما بال الحائض تقضي الصوم ولا تقضي الصلاة، فقالت أحرورية أنت؟ قلت لست بحرورية ولكني أسأل. قالت كان يصيبنا ذلك فنؤمر بقضاء الصوم ولا نؤمر بقضاء الصلاة. متفق عليه. This hadith narrated by Mu'adah bint Abdullah al-Adawiyya, and she said, I asked Aisha radiallahu anha, سألت عائشة radiallahu anha, I asked her, why is that administrate when the woman when the woman, she is in the state of the menstruation, why she makes up her fasting but does not make up her prayers. As we know, like the woman, if she is in the like state of the menstruation, she cannot fast, neither can she cannot what? She cannot pray. But as we know, also, she doesn't make up the salawats. Any prayer that she misses during her period, she doesn't need to make up. But any fast that she misses, she's gonna make it up. So she's asking why she makes up the fasting, but she doesn't the salah. She doesn't make this up salah. And then she asked it, are you one of the Haruriyya? The Haruriyya is an attribution to, like, the a village, and it was like, in like close to Kufa in Iraq. And it was like, it called, the word Haruriyya was called that time the group of the Khawarij. Group of Khawarij, who like, revolted against the Ali radiallahu anhu, and like those, they called Haruriyya. So they are part of the Khawarij. And they used to ask like, why this and why this? Like, so Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, are you a part of this group? Because she was wondering why she is asking about, like, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered this, why, like, and that time it was like, very obvious. Like they used to ask like kind of like, because of the questions. So they kind of like, they used to try a lot of the questions, which is not necessary. And then the Mu'adha bint Abdullah, she said, no, I'm not. I'm not from the Haruriyya. I'm just asking. And she said, كان يصيبنا ذلك. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, كان يصيبنا ذلك. Menstruation, like, during the fasting period, like used to happen to us. That used to be like, to happen to us. And فنؤمر بقضاء الصلاة. We were commanded to make up the fasts. ولا نؤمر بقضاء الصلاة. And like we were not commanded to make up the prayers. متفق عليه. So she said, like, that's what we used to do it. We used to be in that situation, and we used to be like, commanded to make up the fasting, and we like, we were not commanded to make up the what? The prayers. So this is how is it. So like this hadith, we're gonna learn from it that when the woman in her menstruation period, that she don't fast. Not only that, she cannot. يحرم عليها ماذا؟ يحرم عليها الصيام. يجب عليها الإفطار. It's wajib on her, like, to not fast. So she cannot fast if she is in the state of the menstruation. Same thing as when the woman is in the state of the postnatal bleeding. Of course, after giving birth. Now, so that's what we are learning from this hadith, and that's what we are benefiting from it. Another hadith the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned when he was talking about the hadith, the famous hadith, ناقصات عقل ودين. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they asked him, Ya Rasulullah, how is that? He said, أليس إذا حاضت لم تصلي ولم تصم. فقلنا بلى فقال فذلك من نقصان دينها. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked them, isn't it true that when she menstruated or when she is in the menstruation period, she does not pray and nor fasts? And they say, yes, of course. And the Rasul mentioned that, like, there's going to be the deficiency of her religion, because there's a period of time that she don't fast and she don't pray because of that excuse. Now, and the other point that I would like to mention in this matter, if a woman, the menstruation, she had, for example, the personal bleeding or menstruation in the middle of the day. For example, like in the middle of the day, the blood comes. What's she gonna do? So for that case, like that fasting is invalid. So she has to break her fast. It's already it's breaking. So that fasting is not valid. Even if it was before the the setting of the sun, by even a moment. So that the fasting that day will not be valid. So it's going to be obligatory on her to make up that day. Now, unless the fasting was like, the sunnah or the tawwa or the recommended or voluntary fasting. So she's going to make up that day. So that's the situation. In the opposite, she was like, she wasn't fasting. And she gets, like, for example, like, the menstruation period stopped, like, during the day. Is that day wajib is gonna her or obligatory on her? No. Because a part of the day, the fasting, like, she couldn't fast a part of the day. So that day, she don't need to fast. But she has to make up that day. Some ulama, they mention that, like, she is better for her to refrain or to be away from food, eating and drinking, like for the rest of the day, like, out of the rest, out of the, like, the respect of the time, or like, and so on. But, like, another ulama say it's not like, she doesn't need it to do that. And, like, she doesn't need to do it because she has an option. It's not the fasting, it's not wajib on her end, like, so she don't have to. Now, so that's another situation that we need to mention. Another situation that we mentioned to mention about when we talk about the menstruation period, it is like, if she feels the symptoms, like she's fasting today, for example, she's fasting and she feels the symptoms, like, of menstruation, but the menstruation did not come yet. Like she feels cramps, and, like, for example, like, something like that, or the blood leaving, like, the uterus, like, and so on. Like she kind of, like, she felt some of the symptoms that the menstruation period is coming. Does that gonna nullify her fasting? No. Until the menstruation come out or starts, like, she's gonna continue fasting. She's gonna continue fasting. Now, and the other situation is, if, like, she becomes beautified in the night time of Ramadan. For example, I'm gonna give you an example. Like, the blood stop just moments before the Fajr. Like, stop. If the menstruation stop before the Fajr, she has to fast that day. Because she, like, she has to fast that day. What about, like, if she doesn't take bath yet, like, like, taking bath is not a condition of fasting, for the fasting, right? You mentioned that, right? Exactly. So, like, she has to fast. She's gonna do her intention, and, like, then she's gonna fast. Now, so that's also another thing that we need to mention it. Another point, of course, the reason I'm mentioning these points, because I see it's very important for people to know it. And another point that needs to be aware on it, it's also when we're talking about the istihada, or, like, the postnatal bleeding. If, like, woman, she's experiencing, like, the postnatal bleeding, and she becomes beautified before the, like, the end of the 40 days. Like, if she becomes tahir for the end of the 40 days, what's she gonna do? Does she gonna wait until the 40 days is gonna finish? Because the 40 days means, like, it's when the woman, she gives birth, like, the majority of the time, or the majority of the woman, that bleeding is, like, it's gonna continue, like, up to 40 days. So some people, they assume, as long you are in the 40 days, you don't need to fast, you don't need to pray. But that's not the case. The case is, like, the thing is related to what? To the blood. So if the blood stops, then we're gonna say, oh, you have to fast, you have to pray. Now, there's a third blood. When we're talking about the bloods that's coming out from the woman, it's gonna be three. The first one is the menstruation, and the second one is the postnatal bleeding, and the last one, the third one is the istihada, which is, like, unnatural blood. So for the third one, we know the first two, like, if the woman has the first two, postnatal bleeding and the menstruation period, she cannot fast, but she has to make up that days. But the third one, which is istihada, unnatural blood, we're going to say it doesn't prevent fasting, it doesn't prevent praying, it doesn't prevent all of that. She's just gonna take a shower and then she's gonna take the wudu for every day if she's for praying or for fasting. Also, she's gonna fast. So that's when it comes to that blood. So the blood of the istihada is the one sometimes it's continuous. So that's when you're gonna say she's gonna fast, she's gonna pray, all of that. But the other two bloods, she cannot fast, she cannot pray. She cannot fast, she cannot pray. Because the blood of the istihada is continuous, and it's also temporary. And it doesn't, as we say, it doesn't prevent that. So those are the situations that we need to understand it. Those are the situations when we're talking about the ha'id and the nufasa. Those are the situations, and we need to understand. There's more, but I hope this, inshallah ta'ala, is going to be more enough to clarify. نعم. عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعتكف في العشر الأواخر من رمضان. This hadith is talking about i'tikaf. It's talking about what? I'tikaf. Ibn Umar رضي الله عنهما Ibn Umar رضي الله عنهما narrated that the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم used to make i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعتكف العشر الأواخر من رمضان. The Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم used to make i'tikaf in the last 10 days, of Ramadan. متفق عليه. So this hadith is talking about i'tikaf, and it's taken to the masjid, especially in the last 10 days of Ramadan. So to stick in the masjid and to stay in the masjid for the last 10 days of Ramadan, that's what it's talking about. And Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to make i'tikaf. He used to make i'tikaf in that period of the time. Now, salawatu rabbi wa salamuhu alayhi. And of course, i'tikaf is an opportunity that person, you can disconnect the dunya. You're going to come to the masjid. You're staying 10 days in the masjid. Only focusing on praying. Fasting, doing the dhikr, tasbih. So it's kind of doing i'tikaf. You're going to kind of disconnect in the dunya. Focus more to the ibadah and to have their connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, so there's a few points that we need to understand it. The first point that we need to understand is the i'tikaf has to be held, and when you're doing the i'tikaf, you have to do the i'tikaf in a masjid. It has to be an i'tikaf in a masjid. And that masjid has to be a masjid that hold this, the jama'ah, and congregation and prayers. You have to have the jama'ah in the masjid. If the masjid doesn't pray, it's only they pray maghrib and isha faqat, but they don't pray others, you cannot do that i'tikaf there. Now, and also the salatul jum'ah, the nearness also during that masjid. Now, if there's a masjid but they don't do the jum'ah there, you're gonna go jum'ah for another masjid. Also, some ulama say it's gonna be fine to do that as long as you're gonna do the jama'ah in that masjid, but it's is recommended. Now, the other thing that we need to clarify is the mu'takif. When we're talking about the mu'takif, also the one making i'tikaf, the time that he's starting the i'tikaf. What the time of the starting the i'tikaf? The time that you're going to start i'tikaf is going to be before the setting of the sun on the day of the 21st. So, for example, if the tonight is going to be 21st, you should go to the masjid and enter the masjid before the sunset. So you have to move to the masjid before what? Sunset of the night of the 21. So that's what we need to understand when we talk about the i'tikaf. Now, because the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, whoever doing the i'tikaf with me, he let him do it in the last 10 days. من كان اعتكف معي فليعتكف في العشر الأواخر. Now, and also you don't leave the masjid except if you have the need. So the person is going to stay in the masjid for all the 10 days. You don't leave the masjid. The only thing that you can leave the masjid for is going to be if you have the haja. And we can know the hadith of Rasulullah. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, as Aisha said رضي الله عنها, لا يدخل البيت إلا لحاجة. The Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم, إذا كان معتكفا, if the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم is doing i'tikaf, he did not like, he wasn't entered the house except if he has, like, a need. When he was, like, a mutakif, he wasn't doing that. Salawatu Rabbi wa salamu alayhi. And other narration they made, illa li hajati nas, when he has, like, the need of the human being. So that's the one thing that we need also to understand it. We don't leave the masjid. The other thing that we need to be away from it when we're doing the i'tikaf, it's we have to be away from the, like, having the, like, for example, the sexual intercourse with his wife, like, for example, like the kissing or anything like that. The person has to avoid it. The person has to avoid that, and he has to be away from it. And also, some of the things, like, for example, if the masjid doesn't have, like, the place that you can take the shower, and you need to take shower for Jum'ah or for Janaba or for something like that, you can also leave the masjid and come back. Also, you can leave the masjid and come back. Also, if you don't have, like, the food, if there's no food provided in the masjid, also you can go out for the food reason also. That's also some of the reasons that you can go out to, like, they go outside. Now, so those is going to be what related to the i'tikaf. Now, so there, we finished, alhamdulillah, in the parts of talking about the rest of the Ramadan. The rest of the hadith, inshallah ta'ala, is going to be, the most of the hadith that left, inshallah ta'ala, it's going to talk more about the last 10 days of Ramadan. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to go over those, inshallah ta'ala, hadith in the, inshallah ta'ala, next week, Monday, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And we're going to stop here today, inshallah ta'ala. If you have any questions, inshallah ta'ala, I will take your questions, inshallah ta'ala. If there's no questions, inshallah, we're going to stop here بإذن الله تعالى. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى بفضله ومنه وكرمه أن يوفقنا جميعا لما يحب ويرضى، وأن نسأله سبحانه وتعالى أن يتقبل منا ومنكم. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك، نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت، نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. If questions.